Hi students, I hope you all are doing well even though we are facing this crisis due to the pandemic. So, first of all, I would like to ask you some questions. Okay. Which among these is alive? How can you tell? What about these mushrooms, mold, pond scum? Can you tell me what are living from this? What about this one? Which of these are alive and why they are alive? So what about these bacteria, sea urchins, insects? So what do all living things have in common? What do non-living things have in common? Have you ever thought of it? So we shall see there are 7 characteristics to tell whether something is alive or not, and that is the growth and development, reproduction, heredity, homeostasis, metabolism, cellular structure and composition, and response to environment. So growth and development is like how the organisms get bigger and more complex. So energy, metabolism, homeostasis, adaptation, response to stimulus, cell structure, and the reproduction makes something alive. So when we move on to growth and development, we can see that every living organisms increase in their size and number of cells, and this is called growth. And now about metabolism. Metabolism is the all chemical reactions an organism uses to take in and transform energy from the environment. So all living organisms do metabolize. And homeostasis is the maintenance of a stable internal condition. So all living organisms are able to regulate their bodies or body environment, like body temperature, water content, glucose levels, etc. Then every living organism is able to adapt to its environment for survival. So this is another property of a living organisms. And the next property of a living organism is response to stimulus. So stimulus is something, a physical or chemical cue from the environment, and the organisms which get that cue will be able to respond to these changes, and this is only possible in case of living organisms. So the reaction when dog gets food is an example of response to a stimulus. And all living organisms should be able to move in a certain degree. So some are very motile and some are sessile. Sessile means they are fixed, but they tend to show some movements to a change in environment. And then the second last property of a living thing is its cellular organization. So living organisms are made up of cells or group of cells, and this is a very common characteristics of a living organism. And the last property of a living organism is the property of reproduction. So all living organisms produce new organisms, and this is essential for the continuation of that species. So hereditary information from the parent is often transferred to the offspring through the process of reproduction. And these are the 7 characteristics of a living organism. So now you have understood what are living and non-living things, or what makes something alive. But today we shall focus on the last characteristics, that is reproduction. Okay, in case of your home, many of you may have hens at your home, right? So in the morning, hens used to lay eggs. And why do they lay eggs? To produce small chicks. Yes. Why do they need to produce small chicks? They need to produce small chicks to ensure that their species will be continuing throughout the generation. Yes. So reproduction is a means by which an organism produces its offspring. So by producing an offspring, the organism makes sure that their species continues to sustain or survive on earth during the time that goes on. Yes. So when you are considering the process of reproduction, it is very complex and very interesting. Now we shall see a small video, and in the video we shall discuss what is reproduction, its definition, as well as the types of reproduction that is present in the living world. So shall we see? Yes.
When I was 6 years old, I went through a phase where I was really into plants. My sister never really went through a plant phase, although to be fair, she was also 2 years old at the time, so she was kind of into everything. I wanted to have a lot of plants where I could water them and take care of them, but my plant caring skills were not so great, so only some plants were safe. A cactus, perhaps. But you get sick of cacti. One day it so happened, my dad brought home a spider plant. And as usual, the way I imagined a spider plant turned out to not exactly be what a spider plant was, but I was also very happy it wasn't a cactus. "Take really good care of this spider plant and it will have little baby plants," my dad said. "Then you can plant the plantlets and they'll grow into new spider plants too. It'll be fun," he said. Now let's just say I think my dad may have underestimated my dedication with this. Spider plants reproduce by making new, identical baby spider plantlets. The baby plants are genetically identical to the parent plant, meaning they contain the same DNA, a clone basically. You can plant the plantlets and ta-da, new spider plant. As a kid, I didn't realize that what I was seeing at the time was asexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction requires only one organism and results in offspring that are genetically identical, uniform, no genetic variety. And many times there can be an advantage that this can be efficient and fast, since only one organism is involved. Asexual reproduction also occurs with very simple organisms, like bacteria. These prokaryotes literally split into two in a process known as binary fission. Many single-celled eukaryotic organisms, like many protists, can do this too. Another type of asexual reproduction that starts with B is budding. a very small, amazing animal called the hydra can reproduce by budding. That means they literally just bud an identical offspring right off of themselves. It falls off and grows into a new hydra. So in the spider plant example, this was asexual reproduction. But it's important to realize that not all plants can reproduce asexually. In fact, spider plants themselves can reproduce another way. Spider plants and many other plants can undergo sexual reproduction. In fact, lots of organisms can. Some fungi and some protists, many plants, many animals. Sexual reproduction involves the uniting of gametes, which are reproductive cells, to make a new organism. If you're talking about animals, typically these gametes would be known as a sperm cell from the male organism and an egg cell from the female organism. Gametes typically have half the number of chromosomes as a somatic cell. So in humans, sperm and egg cells each have 23 chromosomes. When they combine, they can produce a new cell, a fertilized egg known as a zygote, which would then have 46 chromosomes. This fertilized egg can continue to divide to make more cells and more cells. Oh, look! This fertilized human egg cell is a blastocyst now. Yeah, it'll keep dividing from there. Now, while that was an example of gametes uniting to make a new human, realize that all new organisms that result from sexual reproduction have the potential to be genetically diverse. In sexual reproduction, the offspring are not clones. They receive genetic information from their two different parents. And gametes themselves tend to be different from each other due to independent assortment and crossing over, which both happen when the gametes are made in a process called meiosis. Check out our meiosis video for more about that. So the gametes are different from each other, and they combine to make a unique organism. Now, sexual reproduction can be more time-consuming because it does require two gametes finding each other and uniting. A little more complicated than asexual reproduction when, in many cases, you can just split. So then what is the benefit in sexual reproduction, and why could this even matter? Well, different genes can mean different expressed traits, and different expressed traits could be beneficial in the case of environmental changes. Let's consider these grasshoppers. Let's say the vegetation present changes due to a dry season, and now some colors of grasshoppers have better advantages than others in blending in, which means perhaps better advantages from hiding from predators. Those grasshoppers with the advantage potentially could have higher fitness. But see, that variation is present in the first place because of sexual reproduction. There are definite benefits that come with variety.
Now, you have understood what is reproduction. And also, you have understood what are the different types of reproduction that is present in the living world. So what are the different types of reproduction? Yes, asexual and sexual reproduction. So in the video, we have seen the differences or the definition of each of these types of reproduction. Now, once again, we shall revise the definition of reproduction and the different types of reproduction. Reproduction is a process in which an organism produces its offspring to ensure the continuity of the species throughout the generations. So there are principally two types of reproduction. One is asexual reproduction and the other one is sexual reproductions. And asexual reproduction consists of a single parent from which the daughter or the offsprings are produced. So the offsprings are the exact copy of the parent organisms. Bacteria, unicellular organisms, some reproduce asexually. In case of sexual reproduction, the participating organisms always have two mating types, that is one female and one male, and these exchange gametes, and the fusion of these gametes cause the formation of a zygote, and the zygote will be developed into the offspring. So there is an intermixing of genetic material in sexual reproduction. Now you have thoroughly understood what is reproduction, why it is important, as well as the types of reproduction and their definitions along with examples. Now we shall do an activity. So here I'll be showing two columns, one for asexual reproduction and the other for sexual reproduction, and we shall think and write some differences between these types of reproduction. So shall we do it? Yes. So in case of asexual reproduction, it involves one parent, while in case of sexual reproduction, it involves two organisms. And what about the gametes? In asexual reproduction, gametes are not produced, while in sexual reproduction, gametes are produced. Then in asexual reproductions, the offspring will be genetically identical to the parent, while in case of sexual reproduction, the offspring will be a combination of genes from both the parents. And the cell division is only mitotic in asexual reproduction, while it is meiotic and mitotic in sexual reproduction. In asexual reproduction, large number of offsprings are produced, while in case of sexual reproduction, comparatively the number is less. So to conclude the differences between asexual reproduction and sexual reproductions, we can concise them into these following points. So asexual reproduction consists of one parent, the offspring is identical to the parent, and the DNA is same as the parent. In sexual reproduction, there will be two parents, the offspring is different from parents but still similar, and the DNA will be combined from two parents, and the offspring will be formed from this combination of DNAs. So we have concluded our lesson. Now I have a small exercise for you to do. Take out your notebook, draw two columns. One column is for titled asexual reproduction and the other column is titled sexual reproduction. And do as many researches you can. You can refer net, you can refer books, you can ask your elders, you can look into Google, you can do anything, but you have to research and find out some 5 or 6 examples each for both asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction. You have to find which all organisms undergo asexual reproduction and which organisms undergo asexual reproduction. So this is an assignment for you. I hope you will do this. So now I shall leave. So take care until next class.